The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
Welcome. We are live in Dedham, Massachusetts, the home of the Karen Read trial. We've got a live studio audience with us tonight. They will be part of this program with their questions, comments, and theories at the end of this hour. The subject of our investigation, obviously, the death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe and the trial, the retrial of Karen Read. Now, there are a lot of questions in this case. As a matter of fact, those questions were not answered in the first trial because the first jury was a hung jury. Well, I think they were hung on at least one count, perhaps 3 counts, depends who you ask. That's just the nature of this case. For those of you not familiar with the story, take a look. The death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe remains shrouded in mystery and controversy. According to prosecutors, O'Keefe was struck by his girlfriend, Karen Read's SUV, and left to die in the snow outside of 34 Fairview Road in Canton. But what continues to puzzle both investigators and the public is this. For hours, not one person saw his body lying on the front lawn. Guests came and went from the house that night. Headlights were on, conversations were had, but no one noticed the officer lying just feet from the curb. It wasn't until the following morning, when Karen Read returned in a panic, that his lifeless body was discovered. The timeline has fueled speculation and doubt. Could a man in such visible distress go unnoticed for so long? The defense argues the answer is no, and that the truth lies not in the snow outside, but what happened inside the house that night. A lot of people were in and out of 34 Fairview that night, and that's really been one of the puzzling parts of this case, because you look at either version of what happened here. You know, John O'Keefe struck by Karen Read. There's lots of people in the house. No one saw it. John O'Keefe goes in the house, gets beaten up. Apparently, no one saw it, or no one has said they saw it. So why is it that you have all these people testifying that are there, in and out of the house, in the front, driving back and forth, getting picked up, getting dropped off? You know, saw John O'Keefe. Take a listen to some of the testimony from some of the folks who were there that night.
You certainly did not see his body in the snow toward that flagpole?
No.
And you saw no body in the snow, did you?
I didn't look for a body in the snow.
You could see all the way out to the flagpole?
Yes.
You didn't notice anything unusual at that time when you looked out toward the flagpole walking out of that front door?
I didn't notice anything. I wasn't looking out at the flagpole, but yes.
What, if anything, did you see on the front lawn in the area of the flagpole?
I saw nothing.
If there had been a 6'2", 200-pound man lying in the snow there, would you have seen it?
Objection.
Sustained.
And that's just a sampling of the testimony of the folks who were there at 34 Fairview, driving past 34 Fairview. And it brings us to the first question in our investigation. And this is an extremely important one. And in fact, it's a little bit puzzling. Why didn't anybody see John O'Keefe? He's right on the front lawn. Why didn't anyone see him in the house, out of the house, driving by? Joining me to help answer this question tonight, trial attorney Wayne Dennison, Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson. Also with us, attorney, former prosecutor Catherine Loftus, and John DePietro, host and creator of Road Patrol Live, and with us, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. And Cody, you and I, after the show last night, we went to 34 Fairview in the dark, and interesting ride to say the least.
Absolutely, Vinny. Like you said, we went there in the dark and we rode by on the side of the road closest to the home, and then we did a three-point turn and rode by on the side away from the home. And again, it wasn't snowing. Obviously, it's May up here in Massachusetts. There was not a blizzard going on, but the visibility was a little bit low, to say the least, Vinny.
All right, so let's take a look, because we don't go anywhere without recording it. Let's take a look at our ride last night, Cody, Thomas, and me. All right, so Cody and I are in the car. We're on Cedar Crest on our way to Fairview Road. It's at the next intersection, and we're just going to drive by at night and see what it looks like. Like, what do you see? And I basically have the camera pointed straight out with the same view that I have from the passenger side. Cody, you're in the driver's seat, so I know you're paying attention more to the street. But let's just see what we see.
Coming up here on the right, you can see the fire, fire hydrant right here, the flagpole on the right.
Like it is right there. We just passed the flagpole. That's it.
You can easily see. I mean, there's snow that night, but that's still very close to the road.
Very close. So we're going to turn around and approach from the other side and see what we see when we're driving down the other side of the road. But it's really striking to me that it's right there.
Absolutely.
It's not back. It is on the road.
The yard's not super big, so you can see pretty much all of it just riding by, whether at night or in the daytime.
And again, this is late at night. We already did the show tonight, and we're out shooting this tonight. But now we're approaching from the other side.
So now it's going to be on the left.
It'll be on the left, but like if you're driving down not looking for it, the question is, would you notice it? Is it more noticeable? I thought the yard was really lit up coming down the right side, but coming down the left side, I feel like it's not as lit up.
Yeah, it's kind of unassuming. You have one street light here that kind of illuminates this entire section of the street.
Yeah. So I would say coming this way, I didn't really notice much at all.
Yeah.
But going the other way, I did. And the question is, were people pulling out of the driveway and going the other way or going this way? I think that makes a big difference. Absolutely. Bottom line, though, from that direction, the approach that we had, it's right in front of you because the road even curves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And for me, Cody, that was a big deal, the curvature of the road. And it seemed when we were on the side closest to 34 Fairview that the headlights actually shined on that part of the yard.
Absolutely, Vinny. And as you saw in the video, as all of our live studio audience saw, the yard isn't huge and sprawling. But what I did notice, Vinny, as we were riding by, that area where John O'Keefe was found was a little more dimly lit than the rest of the house because there was only that one singular overhead street light on the opposite side of the house away from where the flagpole was. So I would assume maybe at night you probably couldn't see it if you weren't really paying attention. But like you said, the headlights still shone that close area of the yard that was near the road.
All right, let's bring in the rest of our guests. Why didn't anyone see John O'Keefe? I mean, it's not far from the road. The headlights lighted up. Why doesn't anyone see him?
I would ask one question. When you guys went last night, because I think it's a fair representation, it's a fair question for people to ask, that, there's a number of people who come outside. Is it reasonable that somebody would be laying on the lawn and you wouldn't see them? I don't know, were those your regular beams or high beams? When you regular beams.
Regular.
And so I think, because it clearly shows, as you said, then you see a portion of it on the film. The question really is when we're looking in hindsight, it's easy to say, oh, why didn't they see them? And if they didn't see them, then that means that there was some sort of, ill intent, or they're lying or not telling the truth. Sometimes, you have to think about where are you looking? Are you looking to the side? If you're, all of these people have fairly high levels of intoxication.
I think that's a fair point, but when you're there, and this jury has done a jury view. They did that last year as well. You've been there, I've been there. But they didn't do the jury view at night, and I wish that they had. The other thing that I'm thinking about is the brand new evidence that we saw a difference between trial 1 and trial 2, which is the fact that the law enforcement neighbor across the street had a camera. Yes, so prosecution is claiming that it was pointed down, but did you see those beams, how it would have illuminated? So I want to see from the crash reconstructionist, and there's going to be a different one this time around, did she do a 3-point turn, as they're alleging? How did this happen? And that would have been picked up possibly on that missing video.
I just think it's nighttime. They've all been drinking. People are just thinking about, I got to get home. There wasn't a huge crowd. I mean, there were people. A lot of them were then even closer to the driveway. It does seem odd, but I just think part of this is our behavior at night. which is people are just caught up in, let's get to our, the storm's coming, let's get in our car, the late night, and also that they had been drinking, and it's a fluke, but nobody saw him.
Isn't there a much more obvious answer than this? He wasn't on the lawn.
I mean, I don't know that you can necessarily jump to that because, the problem then, it goes to all these bigger questions because if you don't see him on the lawn, where is he? Is he in the house? And for him to be in the house, there's a lot of things you have to believe. And that's really the difficult part of this case is that, it's easy for all of us to opine and talk about, after the fact.
Well, let's talk about it in this respect, right? I'm a former prosecutor. You have to prove your case. So you need the evidence. So it would have been very helpful if someone had seen him. No one did. So what does the jury take away from that? Does the jury take away from that, well, nobody was paying attention? Or do they take away from that, that's a lack of evidence? Like, which is it? And how much of a problem could that be?
Well, I think it was a big problem, especially when you get to the snowplow driver. Snowplow driver goes by there twice. He notices other cars on the street. He has really no horse in this race. That's a very difficult place for the prosecution.
I also think, though, the ride was very helpful, Vinny, that you guys just showed. But you guys were zoned in on 34 Fairview. I just wonder, were you that alert? And as you're riding along, what about other houses around there? This neighborhood, everyone has an
I was watching
property.
the road because I don't trust Cody driving at night. So I'm paying attention to everything in front of us.
Anyone that's been in that type of setting, sometimes an animal can dart out. I mean, there's various things that can happen. And I just think in the course of that, it's a shame that someone, didn't see him. Brian Higgins was an Army medic. He had a first aid kit. He has told people he wished he had seen him. He could have saved his life. Brian Albert said,
where was he parked? Do we know where he was parked, Higgins? Was he parked in the drive or in the street? Because I've heard both. Do we know?
I don't think that's been made clear.
Yeah,
No.
I don't think it's come up really at all. And again, because
that's
it's
a
so
big deal,
different.
though, isn't it?
But I don't know if it's going to. I don't know if there's going to be anybody who testifies as to where his vehicle was. There was a lot of focus in trial number 1 about where the white Jeep was. It hasn't really been a focus of trial number 2.
And I know that Ted Rowlands has had the question of what kind of marks would leave behind with a plow if there was
hitting the arm.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, everyone staying with us. We've got a lot more to get to this hour. Coming up next, who was at the house after Karen Reed left?
I saw a dark SUV out front.
Did you know whose SUV that was?
I believed it was Karen's.
The Court TV Podcast will return.
John never came into my house that night. He would have been welcomed, and the defendant would have been welcomed with open arms had they come in, and I wish they had. I really do.
Welcome back. We are in Dedham, Massachusetts, just steps from the courthouse where Karen Reed is being tried for the murder of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. And that was Brian Albert Sr. He's the man who owns 34 Fairview. That is the lawn where John O'Keefe was found. And there were a lot of people at his house that night because there was a birthday celebration for Brian Albert Jr. that was taking place, plus Brian Albert Sr. and a bunch of folks coming from the Waterfall Bar and Grill in downtown Canton after it closed, a little bit of an after party. So there's a lot of traffic in and out. Take a listen to Jen McCabe here talking about what she saw when she was looking out the window with regards to Karen Reed's SUV.
I saw a dark SUV out front.
Did you know whose SUV that was?
I believed it was Karen's.
Could you see who was in it?
No, but I saw it in a few different locations. I was expecting John and Karen to come into the house.
Did they ever make it in the house?
No, they did not.
Okay, she says they didn't make it in the house, and obviously Karen Reed didn't go in the house, so Karen Reed left. Which brings us to the next question in our investigation. And it is, who was at the house after Karen Reed left? An important question because these are people who could either see John O'Keefe on the lawn or could be potentially, like the defense has alleged, part of this cover-up and murder of John O'Keefe inside the house. Still with me here in studio, Wayne Dennison, Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, Catherine Loftus, and John DePietro, and of course, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, still with us as well. I want to take a look at all the people that were there. Let's put this up on the screen because I think this is important when you talk about numbers. And that's what has always struck me about this case is just the number of people who were at 34 Fairview after Karen Reed left. You take a look, Brian Higgins, Jennifer McCabe, her husband Matthew McCabe, Julie Nagel, Sarah Levinson, Caitlin Albert, Tristan Morris, Brian Loughran drove past 34 Fairview. Obviously, he's plowing the streets, he's not going inside. Brian Albert Sr., Nicole Albert, and Brian Albert Jr. So, Cody, as we look at all these people, some are walking in and out of the house, some are driving away. We spent some time at a house similar to 34 Fairview today. Tomorrow we will show folks the results of all of that. Absolutely. But one of the things you did was walk in and out of the house and to see what you would see. I guess we'll give them a sneak preview. Was it crystal clear if you were walking out of that house that you would necessarily see everything in front of the house?
Crystal clear might be a strong statement. You can see everything in front of you wherever you were looking, your perspective, obviously, wherever you were focused on, going to your car, going to the driveway. That doesn't necessarily mean that you would have swung your head towards the flagpole where his body was found or any which way. So, I mean, of course, the whole yard was open, the whole neighborhood was open, but depends on where you were looking, depends on where your attention was when you're walking out the front door of that house, where you were leaving. Okay, and you're going to see that tomorrow night, folks, because we went to a house that is very similar to 34 Fairview. Slightly inverted, but in this case, you're allowed to invert the video. So we'll just do that for you tomorrow night. So all these people, Matt, so many people, I don't know if we're going to hear from all these people, but they were all there, and none of them can help prosecutors prove this part of the case, that John O'Keefe's body was on that front yard.
I definitely want to hear from the homeowners, right? At least them. And I'm wondering if the defense has any plans to call them if, you know, Hank Brennan does not. But it's where you went is a much bigger yard than where 34 Fairview is. I have to tell you that it's only about 7 feet away from the curb where that huge curb is. And that's another question into itself. If she did a 3-point turn and all of the pieces are allegedly in the yard, how come her car didn't get stuck in that curb? That's a different question. But it's so close to the street where these cars would have been picking up people and dropping people off and parking themselves. How come they didn't see anything?
And the house is just 30 feet from the curb as well. I mean, it's very, very close. I don't know. Does the jury understand? If none of these people are testifying, they're all there, and obviously they can't testify about seeing something they didn't see. If I'm a juror, what do I take away from that? You've got 11 people at the house, and no one's coming in here and saying, yeah, oh yeah, I saw a body on the front yard.
Well, Vinny, I think Hank Brennan has done a good job where everyone inside basically tells the same story, that it was light, everyone was just having a good time, listening to music, the whole thing with Raining Men. I think he did a good job in asking all of them, were there any problems? Was there any disagreement? Was there any type of fight like that? No one in the house hinted that there was any type of conflict. Now, granted, you know, Brian Albert's a big guy.
It's both
Brian
sides
Higgins.
here, right? Like, all these witnesses that are there don't see John O'Keefe struck by the car.
Right.
They don't see the aftermath of that. And then you flip it to the other side, no one testifies about seeing anything in the house either. Right. This is bizarro. This is bizarre, but ultimately it's up to prosecutors to prove the case.
It is up to the prosecutor to prove the case, but ultimately the prosecution is going to have a number of witnesses who all say he didn't come in the house. And that's pretty probative evidence that he didn't come in the house. And yeah, they all have their stories, and their stories are extremely well aligned, and you can make arguments about why they're so well aligned.
Well, I'll just say this as I continue to promote tomorrow night's program. that we take a look at that issue. Could you walk into that house and get to the basement without being seen? So that's another interesting part of it.
Karen Reed recently told me on the courthouse steps she saw him walk inside through that front door. So it'll be interesting to see, perhaps, maybe she'll take the stand this time and tell that.
Did she say the front door or did she say the driveway?
She said through the door. I can't remember exactly which door.
Well, because that would be different if she said the front door would be the door. And, you know, and that's the I think the difficult part for Miss Reed is that, you know, her statements have varied, you know, fairly inconsistently as they've gone on. You know, originally there's a question from troopers about whether she sees him go in the house. He says no, you know, and then we have subsequent interviews that I think you can argue add largely self-serving facts. You know, saw him walk up the driveway, hand on the door. You know, next interview is poking his head in, and finally he goes all the way in. You know, and ultimately, from the prosecutor's perspective, they don't have to prove or disprove that he didn't go in the house. They have to prove the elements of the charges that they have against him. And I think Hank Brennan is doing something completely differently than we saw in trial one with prosecutor Adam Lally, is that A.D. Lally was trying to prove his case while also trying to disprove the defense theory.
Right, he was very defensive in his case.
Hank Brennan, if you look at the elements, you don't need anybody in the house. You've proven, you know, if you look at the manslaughter, which I think everybody realizes is the real charge.
I think it's going to come down to the crash reconstructionists and what they do. And I know that the ARCA discovery was recently turned over, so maybe we'll finally get to that in this part of the trial.
And once again, it comes back to ARCA. Back to ARCA. Well done. All right, everyone's staying. Up next, why didn't Ryan and Heather, remember Ryan and Heather? Why didn't they see John O'Keefe?
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
We are live in Dedham, Massachusetts with our continuing in-depth coverage of the retrial of the century, Massachusetts versus Karen Reed. She's been charged with the murder of her boyfriend at the time, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. And the subject of our investigation is taking a look at the death of John O'Keefe and taking a look at some of the witnesses and potential witnesses, what they saw, what they didn't see. For those of you not familiar with the story, take a look. The night John O'Keefe died has become one of the most scrutinized in recent memory, marked by chilling uncertainty and fierce debate. Prosecutors claim Karen Reed dropped the Boston police officer off outside of 34 Fairview Road in Canton, where he never made it inside and was fatally struck by her SUV. But the defense paints a far darker picture, one where O'Keefe did enter the home and met his end not in the snow, but within those walls. The core of the controversy centers on that unanswered question. Did he ever go inside? Surveillance gaps, conflicting witness accounts, and forensic inconsistencies have fueled a firestorm of speculation. Supporters of Reed argue a cover-up is unfolding, while others remain convinced of her guilt. As the trial unfolds, the mystery of whether John O'Keefe stepped over the threshold of Fairview that night remains a pivotal, haunting question and the key to unlocking the truth behind his death. And it's about witnesses. You have all these people at 34 Fairview. Some are dropping people off, picking people up, and showing up. And John O'Keefe was there at some point because he was in the car with Karen Reed when they pulled up in front. Once Karen Reed pulls up in front of that car with John O'Keefe, that's where the two stories completely diverge. Either he gets out of the car, goes into the house, or gets out of the car and gets struck by Karen Reed. That's what this trial is about. That's what this jury has to figure out through the evidence. Some of the evidence is testimony of witnesses. I want to get to one crucial part of this. I call it Dome Gate, where Karen Reed is in her car and her dome light is on. And there are two witnesses who testified about what they saw and what they didn't see. They are exes at this point, Ryan Nagel and Heather Maxson, but they both testified in the trial about that moment because their car was directly behind Karen Reed, and then they drove around her, and they left the scene before Karen Reed left in her SUV. Take a listen.
There was a woman in the driver's seat of the black SUV in front of me, sitting there with her hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2.
But you saw that the passenger's seat was empty. Do you remember that?
Yes.
All right. You're not changing that testimony?
No, I'm not changing that. No.
I observed the female in the driver's seat. I did not see any other person, just the female in the driver's seat.
And they were both passengers in the same car, one in the passenger seat, one in the back seat. The driver has not testified. But this brings us to the next question in our investigation, which is, why didn't Ryan and Heather see John O'Keefe? Why didn't they see him in the car, outside of the car, somewhere? All right, still with us, joining me here on set, Wayne Dennison, great attorney, won the Johnny Depp case. Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson. Catherine Loftus, prolific in the courtroom and on social media. And John DePietro, Road Patrol Live. Great to have you all here. Plus Cody Thomas, Court TV field reporter. So Cody, again, after the show, we were busy.
Absolutely.
We did our own version of Domegate, and we tried to reenact as well as we could that moment of two people in a car, or is it one person in a car and a dome light? And let's show it to the folks. Let's do this. So what we're going to take a look at, so to set this all up, folks, after the show, Cody and I, we find a couple members of our studio audience. Can you help us out tonight? They didn't know what they were in for. We take them to a dark street in Dedham. And they weren't scared. They were okay. And we put someone behind the wheel of an SUV with a dome light on. I then was driving a second car with a second audience member next to me. And the question was, are there two people or one person inside that car? So we drove by twice. Take a look. Okay, so we're in the car. Ashley is with me. We're going to take a ride by. We are leaving where we're parking, and we're just going to drive past this car. And just like a 1 second glance. And then after the 1 second glance, you tell me what you see or don't see. 1 second glance, what do you see, don't see?
I saw one person.
You saw one person?
One person.
Okay. First time through, you saw one person?
One person, driver's side.
Okay. So now, Ashley, we're going to make a second pass. And again, same thing. We're just going to drive by and take a quick 1 second glance, and then you tell me what, if anything, you see.
I saw two people.
You saw two people?
I saw two people.
Okay. All right. Let's talk to Cody and see what happened that first time, if he was there. All right. So one more time. So first time you saw one person.
One.
Second time you saw two people.
Two.
So let's go to Cody and get the reveal here. Okay. All right, Cody, we did two passes.
Yes, sir.
First pass, how many people in the car?
One.
Second time?
Two.
Guess what?
I got it right.
She got it right.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
All right. All right.
You know what was interesting? As I'm watching that video, Cody, I don't know what you saw. I didn't see you in the second time when I was driving carefully, but I quickly
Unlike
just...
me.
Yeah, unlike Cody, right? But I turned the camera really quickly like that, and from the camera, I couldn't see you necessarily, but Ashley did.
I couldn't see myself, Vinnie, and I knew I was in the car, you know? I don't know how our studio audience felt about that, but I couldn't see myself, and, we had the one dome light on, kind of on the driver's side anyway, but, yeah, I was, and the first time I was outside of the car making sure Ashley couldn't see me in my hiding
Where were
spot.
you hiding? Because I didn't see you at all.
Well, that's secret safe with me.
Okay.
No, I was in front of the car. We were parked behind another parked car, and I was hiding behind that one. And as y'all came by, I kind of just, whoop, whoop, got out of the way. But the second time around, I made sure I was in the car just to have, two different results to see what she saw. And of course, Ashley got it right. And of course, Ryan Nagel and Heather Maxson said they didn't see anybody in the passenger seat, but everyone's different. Everyone's eyes are different. Everyone's perceptions are different. If they've been drinking, that makes things a little bit different, so.
And we know Ashley was not drinking.
We do absolutely know. Our lovely member, Ashley, was not drinking here.
we test everyone beforehand. Okay, so why didn't they see John O'Keefe? Where is he?
you know, the difficult thing I think with, you know, in the recreation like this is that, one, we're looking for something. We know now that, you know, this is the issue of whether he's in the car. So it's not really the same, you know, it's as close as maybe we can get. You know, the other question I have is, I think sort of common knowledge is if there's a dome light on, there's two ways to do it. Either you turn it on, it's in your car, or the passenger side or one of the doors is open. So, you know, Ryan Nagel and Heather Matson's testimony, I think, really helps and hurts both of them, because they both testified they don't see anybody walking across the lawn. They don't see anybody go up the driveway. They also say they don't see anybody in the passenger seat. So what does the jury do? Do they, you know, is there more weight one way or the other?
How foggy are those windows in their car? How much snow is coming down? I think the conditions are a little bit different too.
Vinny, I liked Ryan Nagel as a witness just because he never wavered, really, you know, tuned in. Yes, sir. He never embellished. His testimony, second trial, same as the first trial, and Yannetti was cross-examining him. But I agree as far as he didn't see anyone going in. But it is unusual that he only saw Karen Reed, because then it does open up the door and begs the question, where was John O'Keefe at that point?
And again, I come back to this because I'm a former prosecutor. Like, I have the burden. You've got to prove the case. So you've got lack of evidence on both sides. And what I hear from folks aligned with the prosecution is that, well, they didn't see him go in the house, so that's great. I get it, but he wasn't in the car either. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. And if it's not clear, and I go back to the juror that I interviewed afterwards, I said, well, what happened? He said, I don't know what happened. And that doesn't mean the defense proved a conspiracy. What it means is that prosecutors did not establish what happened. And I understand you only have to prove the elements of the crime, but in this case, it seems, Wayne, you need a little more, like you need to fill in the gaps a little bit about what happened. There's all these people I keep coming back to it, all these people at the house, and there's still a lack of evidence you would expect prosecutors to have.
Right, and this started out with Alan Jackson saying this is a reasonable doubt case. He doesn't have to prove anything. He has to prove nothing. All he has to show is there's reasonable doubt that she committed this crime. And those two witnesses, and I think those two witnesses, especially Heather Maxson and Ryan Nagel, both of them were completely credible. Neither of them saw John O'Keefe in the car. Neither of them saw John O'Keefe on the lawn. That's a problem for the prosecution.
Well, at the same time, I think it just also adds to the night that there's just, you're out, they're not looking for it. As Kathleen had said, they're just oblivious to what's happening around them. But at the same time, he did pick out Karen Reed was right there, and it's not like they say we saw someone go across the lawn.
Right, and that's a great point, that it's not like I didn't see anything. No, I saw one person. Right. I didn't see two people. And
the description, 10 and 2, yeah. Like it was very vivid of what he could recall.
Now, obviously, in what we did, we didn't have the same exact vehicle, so everything I understand is different. But at the end of the day, like, common sense, jurors are told, bring your common sense and life experience. Dome light on, I can see what's happening in the car in front of me. If the dome light wasn't on, I get it. You might see the person closest to you. But with the light actually on, do we think, where do you think John O'Keefe was? Let me ask you, where was he at that moment that Heather and Ryan are driving past? Where is he, and why is the dome light on?
Is he already out of the vehicle? Is he have his seat reclined? Are they arguing and he's put his seat back, that he's just fed up with her? Or is he there, but just at an angle that when they look, they actually miss him?
He dropped his phone, maybe. He's
possible.
Up his phone. There you go. Okay. Fasten your seatbelts, because when we come back, questions, comments, theories from our live studio audience.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
I mean, I didn't think I hit him, but could I have clipped him? Could I have tagged him in the knee and incapacitated him? He didn't look mortally wounded as far as I could see, or could I have done something that knocked him out?
Welcome back. We are live in Dedham, Massachusetts with our live studio audience, and it's now their turn. Get ready, folks. We have no idea what they are going to say. So let's bring them in. First contestant, come on down. Oh, look, it was our witness from Dome Gate. Great to see you, Ashley. What's your question or comment tonight?
So we hear a lot about there being another party or two parties' blood on John O'Keefe's shoes. Why is that not talked about more, and why have we not tested it to see whose it is?
How about that? Who's heard about that?
I have not heard that.
You have not heard about that?
So far, I've never heard that.
I don't. His articles of clothing, maybe not the shoes, but.
Anyone heard anything about that? Has anyone heard any of that in the courtroom?
No.
I haven't heard it in the courtroom.
Interesting. Where did you hear it? On the internet? Well, no, because there's a lot of information flowing on the internet.
I feel like I did hear it on the internet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it may.
No testimony on that so far.
No testimony, you haven't heard it. Okay.
Nope.
All right. But great job last night. Come on down. We've got our next. And what's your name?
Karen.
Oh, we've got a Karen.
I knew you were going to say Karen.
I know. You've heard it a million times already. So your question or comment?
So in the first trial, Brian Albert said Chloe was in the closet. This trial, Jen McCabe said she ran into the room to wake them up, saw no dog, and heard no dog. What's your opinion on that?
Maybe the closet door
Where's
was
the dog?
closed. You know, maybe the closet door was closed, Vinny. I don't know.
And Jen was not, you know, she just didn't see the dog. So unless, well, that's what she testified to, that it was a non-issue. And we haven't seen Brian Albert. So that's the answer to that.
I think that, you know, the difficult thing is sometimes when we're watching the case from outside, we have all the information about not only everything that's been talked about pre-trial, but also what was testified to as to trial number one. Trial number two is very different. We heard Jen McCabe talk about that she didn't see the dog. I don't think we're going to hear from Brian Albert. If he gets called by the defense, that's probably a question they'll ask him specifically. But as of yet, we haven't heard much outside of Jen McCabe's testimony.
I think we're going to. There's going to be a big, you know, defense case about the dog. Then there's going to be a rebuttal case about the dog. But why didn't anyone hear the dog? I think that's the big question, too, no matter where the dog was, right?
Well, Vinny said there were 11 people at the house. He didn't mention the dog at all.
Yeah, that's true. I just want a quick show of hands. Who thinks the issue involving the dog is a big deal?
I do.
Wow. Big deal. Thank you so much, Karen. Okay, come on down. Don't be shy. What's your name?
My name is Pat from Quincy.
Pat from Quincy. From Quincy, right? They say Quincy, even though it's not spelled that way. That's right. A lot of connections in this case to Quincy, so I'm interested in what your question or comment is.
Are the people who destroyed their phones going to be charged with obstruction of justice in this trial?
No. Both had legally the right to do it. Brian Higgins had it extracted, and Brian Albert, he upgraded his phone, but both of them did it before. They didn't violate any court order.
Boy, the timing was very strange.
By changing their phone number, that the voicemails would be gone.
But if you gave your word to an informant, a confidential informant, that no one would ever see a communication, and you have the legal right to upgrade your phone, that's one reason to upgrade it.
You know, I think it goes to. It seems clear, at least to me as an observer, and probably everybody, that their excuses as to why they got rid of the phone are probably not being truthful, right? But we saw what happened when the investigators got Michael Proctor's phone. These are two law enforcement officers who, you know, quite frankly, I think there were probably a lot of things on the phone that they didn't want. They had people accusing them of murder, you know, on the defense side. Legally, I don't think there's any likelihood they're going to be charged. There was a motion that was filed. They weren't served with anything. Interestingly enough, that motion ultimately was denied by a different judge who was on this case before Judge Cannoni. So they wouldn't have actually had to turn over their phones if they hadn't thrown them away. But, you know, now the defense gets to argue that.
It just doesn't smell right, I think, with a lot of folks. By the way, there's some breaking news. Ashley, come back up here, please. Let's all apologize to Ashley, because in their opening statement, the defense did say there was some unidentified DNA on the shoes.
Not blood.
Not blood, but unidentified DNA. Matt, seems like that'll be part of the defense case.
Absolutely will be part of the defense case. I think that we're seeing a lot of things that are very different from trial 1 to trial 2. And I think that that is an indication of something that is going to be big yet to come.
I think it's huge. Ashley on top of it. Thank you so much. All right, come on down, sir. Yes, sometimes men show up here. It's not just an audience of ladies. Here we go. What's your name, sir?
My name's Mike from Boston, and thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. So I guess my question, I had a million questions, but now I'm tired. As attorneys up there watching this Super Bowl of a trial, I would say, because I've never been with Vinnie in court TV in Dedham before, so this is kind of big. Watching these attorneys, what is your favorite attorney moment up to this point in the trial where you were like, wow, that was really awesome?
Oh, let's go down the line. We'll start with Wayne.
My overall belief here is that I think Hank Brennan overall has done just a terrific job of organizing his case, trying to put his case on in a way that is intelligible and where he basically hits all the buttons and just moves on.
Catherine?
I would say, I'm going to answer this in two parts. I think that Alan Jackson is doing an excellent job at cross-examining all of these witnesses and really able to glean what he wants from them, poke holes. And then on the other side, Attorney Brennan really almost after every single witness is subject to cross-examination, you know, puts somebody on the stand or plays a clip that really sort of deflates. It
sounds to me, Catherine, like you were part of the first jury because you're hung right here.
I am.
No verdict from you. John DePietro, real quick.
You know, I like how AJ gets into, he was doing with Yuri, like, you know, the fighting stance and courage. But Hank Brennan, just the way he makes it so simple. When he gets up, the jury's locked on him. He doesn't, Elise goes on a little too far. Hank Brennan is just the facts.
All right, thank you, sir. We got time for one more. Perfect. What's your name?
Tina. So I'm wondering if it's normal that witnesses of a suspected crime or accident lawyer up before they're interviewed by police?
Great question. How normal is that?
Well, I think any of the attorneys, we would all say that, you know, specifically relative to a homicide, you know, it's always better to be safe than sorry. You know, you can't be, you know, can't be used against you. The fact that, you know, somebody is, this finger's being pointed at you, this idea that, oh, if you're innocent, just go talk to the police. I think that's what we're arguing against, that the police will, you know, twist or change things if you do that. So my advice is you should always have a lawyer.
Wayne, 10 seconds.
Every single time, if there's going to be a witness who wants to go talk to the police, I want to know about it.
I just want to throw out, the witnesses have told me they were thrown because there was a federal grand jury, so they didn't know what was going on that spring when they're being torn between the two grand juries.
And there's a civil litigation also pending, and a lot of these people will be witnesses.
All right, big thank you, Wayne Dennison, Matt Johnson, Catherine Loftus, John DePietro, and of course, Cody Thomas. And thank you to this amazing live studio audience in Dedham. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. Great to see you. Thank you so much for coming in.
There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.